Hello, welcome to the Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. In this video, we are going to be dedicating ourselves to Khorne and all of the blood that must flow and all the skulls we must take for this index review for the Blades of Khorne. This is going to be a deep dive on all of the rules for all of the different units across the army and maybe how you would play certain parts of the army. It's one of several videos that I'm going to make for Blades of Khorne. We're going to do tier lists for the different units. We're going to do list writing. I myself, actually, I'm recording this on a Friday, am playing Khorne literally this weekend at a competitive Age of Sigmar event. So I'm really looking forward to looking through all of the rules and breaking it down, and I hope you enjoy the video. And if you do, please do leave as many comments or likes and all those other things down below. I love reading the comments, and then I get a lot of hype from reading the comments. So anything you want to say, things you're excited about, even just hearing like, I'm excited about being a Khorne guy, whatever you like, I'd love to read them. Right, let's go look at the battle traits. Lastly, I just very much like to dedicate this video to my friend James. I miss him greatly. He's wonderful. When you're playing this army, you'll gain access to your army special rules, and they are called battle traits. So these are abilities only exclusive to the Khorne army, and it's one of the reasons, apart from loving painting red and screaming at the top of your lungs, that you're going to play a Khorne force. So your battle traits are all orientated around units dying and then using those resources to do more stuff in the game. This passive is called Bloodth, and the effect is that you start the battle with 0 Bloodth points, and you earn 1 Bloodth point each time a unit, friendly or enemy, is destroyed. It's important to note, and if this is your first time playing Age of Sigmar 4 or running into any rules, that the manifestation, so these are spells that are going to be physically on the board, and also terrain, are things with health values that you can also kill. Those things are not going to count as units for Bloodth. Therefore, it's just units that you kill. Really simple. However, there is other stuff, and I think that is a question people will ask a lot, so I thought if I just clarify that now, that would help. Either way, when you do kill some units, you'll end up with some Bloodth points. Every turn, and a battle round is made up of 2 turns, your turn and your opponent's turn. Every turn, you're going to be able to use 1 Bloodth ability, and there are 5 to choose from. The first one is Murderlust, and this costs only 1 Bloodth point. If you have, let's say, 7 Bloodth point, and you use 1, you'll still have 6 remaining. You don't have to use them all up to use 1. You use 1 Bloodth point, and you pick a friendly target, and that target can move 3 inches, and it can move into combat. This is all done in the movement phase. This is actually an amazing ability. It's maybe not as strong as it once was, because you used to be able to do it with D6 inches and obviously go the full 6. But it does mean you can move into your opponent's combat zone, and therefore they are going to not be able to charge because it's done in the movement phase. The way it works is, in the turn phase, whoever the active player is does all of their movement phase abilities, and moving is an ability, and then whoever the inactive player is does a movement. It does all their movement abilities. Doesn't do movement, does all their movement abilities, right? And obviously, if you're the inactive player, you can't do moves, but you can do this. So this is either going to be really effective to always guarantee a charge in your turn, because you'll be able to move up within 3 inches, and then as long as they don't use redeploy ability, just move in and potentially remove any like charge reaction stuff that they have. Some people have like anti-charge rend +1 as an example, but this is going to avoid that. Or in your opponent's turn, if your opponent has like moved sloppily and has ended up putting themselves within 6 inches of your units, because your combat range is 3 inches, then you'll be able to move 3 and have an additional 3 inches, and you'll be able to, what we call, tag a unit, therefore engaging it in combat. It's quite a large range, and it's actually very, very effective as an ability. Iron Jaws have an ability that's similar as well. And on paper, it might not read as very exciting, and it isn't very exciting to face, but it is also very impactful. So that's why I'm kind of going on about it a lot. The next one is much easier. Brass Skull Meteor can be done in the hero phase, and it can be done in any hero phase, which is nice. You spend... I've done that in the wrong order. I want to do it in this number order. So the next one we're going to talk about is Spell Eater Curse. This is a reaction to your opponent declaring a spell ability. You can only use this ability, and it costs 2 Bloodth points, right? That's it. So your opponent declares a spell ability, you declare a reaction, and then that spell is unbound. It can be done in either turn, so if your opponent ends up trying to cast a spell in your turn or cast spells in their turn, that's quite nice. For their one big clutch spell, this is really good. Techless fans in shatters right now. The other one that's also done in any hero phase, the Brass Skull Meteor, costs 4 Bloodth points, and you pick a enemy unit visible to the friendly Blades of Corn hero target, which is anywhere on the board visible is wild range, super effective. You roll 8 dice. For each 3+, you inflict 1 mortal damage on the target. So if you roll pretty well, most of the heroes are 5-ish wounds. So if you roll really well, you could easily clear out an enemy hero very quickly, which is really, really nice and effective. But it does require 4 units to have died in the game, so this is only going to power up later. The next one is called Heads Must Roll, and it's done in any combat phase, which will mean every combat phase. And you use 6 Blood Tithe points. For the rest of the turn, you add 1 to the rend characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly Blades of Corn units. Now, in the right situation, this might be very if you look at it and think, yeah, this is the one for me. But personally, I don't see this as being quintessential to how I'd like to play, so I probably would avoid that. And the last one, Slaughter Triumphant, is done in any movement phase. And this is quite nice because it's both a win condition and an elastic condition at the same time. It's done in any movement phase. You spend 8 Blood Tithe points, and you pick one of the 2 following effects. You add 1 to the attack characteristic of melee weapons for the Blades of Corn units for the rest of the battle. That's what I would call a win more condition. You're already doing well. You're charging in with lots of units. Lots of units are fighting. You get to add an additional attack to all of your attacks, and it helps you win more, helps you win big. The other one is you pick a friendly non-unique Bloodthirster, so not Scarbrand, that has been destroyed, and you set up an identical replacement unit on the battlefield more than 9 inches from all enemy units. This is the elastic condition, where early on you might just yeet in a giant Bloodthirster to go beat some people up, which is great. Ends up dying, and then you can bring it all back if you've got those 8 Blood Tithe points, which is actually really fantastic. So I love both of those 2 abilities because they really understand that all of the units that are dying, gaining you 8 Blood Tithe points could either be a negative or a positive, and then it gives you a ability to come back in the game, bring back a Bloodthirster, or the ability to drive home the win with the plus attacks. So I think all round this is nice. In what is an incredibly dynamic game, Age of Sigmar 4 is fantastically dynamic. You're able to do movement abilities in your opponent's turn, counter charge, power throughs, a bunch of stuff that's really going to benefit melee armies and combat armies like the Khorne Force. And having all of these options to do more additional things based on units dying is actually pretty sick. As well as your army rules, you also get a free piece of terrain, although you have to obviously buy it, to bring along with your army. And yours is the Skull Altar. Terrain is destroyable in Age of Sigmar 4, so you are maybe going to have to protect it because it's your main source of gaining bonuses to cast and also providing some sort of level of magic protection for your Khorne Force. So it's got 10 health and a 4-up save, which is okay when it comes to faction terrain, but very destroyable in my opinion. You are able to mount a priest atop of it thanks to the Ascend the Altar ability that you do in your hero phase, where if the faction terrain does not have an invoker, you pick a friendly Blades of Corn infantry priest within 3 inches to be the target, place that target on this terrain feature, that target is now an invoker, okay? The invoker gains the Words of Hate passive. While this terrain feature has an invoker, you add 1 to chanting rolls to the invoker. The invoker cannot use the move abilities. Instead of measuring range or visibility to the invoker, measured to this terrain feature instead. All attacks that would target the invoker target the invoker, target this terrain. If this terrain feature is destroyed before removing it from the battlefield, inflict D3 mortal damage on the invoker. Then set up the invoker on this battlefield, wholly within 3 inches of that terrain feature and not in combat. There's also a special ability called Descend the Altar, where if this terrain feature has an invoker, set up the invoker on the battlefield wholly within 6 inches of this terrain feature and not in combat. And that unit is no longer an invoker, sadly. So that is just a lot of stuff to describe the fact that you can put someone on it, they can get off it, and if it's destroyed, they can do some other stuff. It's also been FAQ'd that while the invoker, or whoever is the invoker on the terrain, cannot use any fight abilities. So basically, you're just going to get hit inside of it like you're inside a tin can. Okay, so what is all this faff about? What does it get you? Well, it gets you this amazing ability called Hatred of Sorcery, where a friendly unit within 18 inches of this terrain feature was picked to be the target of an enemy spell. You roll a dice, and on a 5-up, if this terrain feature has an invoker, you gain 1 Blood Tithe point. And then you ignore the effect of that spell on a friendly unit. This terrain feature can use this ability more than once per phase, but you can only roll once for each friendly unit per spell cast. So that's pretty nice as a way of generating a lot of Blood Tithe, as we know, a main resource for your army. In addition, it kind of encourages you always to take a priest, which you're going to do anyway, to be able to make your invoker, and maybe gives you a reason to protect that piece of terrain a bit. Thankfully, this isn't anywhere near as impactful as something like a Loon Shrine, where a Loon Shrine is used to bring back units from the dead. Therefore, you are going to want to protect that more because it's a key function of how your army works. This is nice, and it's especially nice against like a very heavy magic list, but isn't mega necessary, which I think is okay. Maybe the best way to look at this is a 10 ablative wounds for your priest, where it just stacks up all those additional wounds on your unit and just makes it so that they have to do all 10 of those wounds before they start hitting your main guy, which I think is quite good. So Skull Altar is fine, impactful, especially into an anti-magic pick. On your army list, you're also going to choose one of 4 different battle formations to be the battle formation for your army. This is describing a play style for your army, and it's giving you additional rules, and it's something you'll take into account when you're building your army list. There are 4 to choose from, and you'll pick one. The first one is the Khorne Legion, which once per turn across the whole army, so you're going to do it once per turn, you declared a fight ability for a friendly Blades of Corn demon unit. And then the unit using that fight ability, a friendly bloodbound unit that has not used a fight ability this turn and is within 12 inches of the unit using this ability, the target can immediately be picked to fight. This is what we would call a chain activation, where one unit fights and the other unit immediately fights. Normally in the combat phase, players take turns alternating their activations. I take a turn, then my opponent would take a turn. This means 2 units get to go at the same time. This is actually an incredibly broadly written chain activation. Many of them are like little small foot heroes that aren't particularly good fighting alongside another unit. Because this is a Blades of Corn demon unit, that could easily be a Bloodthirster, which, as we know, is already pretty fighty. But the follow-on stipulation is that it can then be a mortal unit, means you could take one of your really elite infantry units like Skull Takers and fight both of them at the same time, which is pretty prodigious in my opinion. I know people don't like it when I say that, sorry. It's really prodigious. Another good thing about this ability is that it says within 12 inches versus being wholly within 12 inches. Therefore, some abilities are similar to this, but are wholly within 12 inches. This is really nice because this gives you a broader ability range, and therefore a bigger unit potentially could also be included as well. Overall, this is really nice for an army that wants to fight a lot. The next battle formation is Murder Host, and it grants the passive Strength Through Slaughter, where if a friendly non-monster Blades of Corn demon unit uses a fight ability, it has a 5 at ward save for the rest of the turn. This is not too bad, but it does have a lot of stipulations to it, specifically that it's going to be only Corn demon units. They have to be in the fight phase to make this happen, and you hopefully would have already fought as well. So this is just when you get hit back, so it's okay. The next one, Breast Stampede, gives you the passive Obliterating Charge, where if the unmodified charge roll for a friendly Blades of Corn cavalry unit is an 8+, has a strike first for the rest of the turn. This is really nice if you're planning on building a massive Corn cavalry army. Strike first is really, really effective, and obviously you can get to fight with a load of units as well, which we really like. And the last one, Bloodbound War Horde, gives you the passive Tireless Conquerors, where you add one to the hit rolls for combat attacks made by friendly bloodbound units that target an enemy unit that is contesting an objective you do not control. So that's quite a lot of stipulations. You need to be using only bloodbound units, charging enemy units that are fighting on an objective you do not control, and you get the very minimal passive of +1 to hit. So probably what you'll see most is some sort of Corn Demon making a mortal unit fight at the same time. On your army list, you are going to be able to pick one of 3 different heroic traits for one of your heroes. It does not need to be on your general. You will have a general in your army. It can just be on any of your other heroes. There are 3 to choose from. The first one, in my opinion, probably the best one, is Firebrand, where if this unit is not a priest, it has priest level 1. If this unit is already a priest, you get to add +1 to banishment rolls. So I think that's actually not overly effective to add onto an already existing priest, but it is really good for adding an additional priest to your army. Some units, like a Bloodthirster as an example, just because he's big, and I'll probably mention it a lot, is really good in combat. And that's what you really want from your army. You want something that's good in combat. Therefore, being able to make it be a utility piece, support piece as a priest as well, where sometimes you'll just be bringing a priest who's level 1 just to use your manifestations, means it's double effective. So Firebrand is really good. The next one is Relentless Hunter, and it's a passive where if this unit is picked to be the target of Murderlust ability, it can move 6 inches instead of 3 inches. That's actually super good. Although Murderlust is going to require a resource to do, this means you've got an even larger threat range with a larger model. And the last one is Favored of the Corn, and it grants a passive where you begin the battle round with 1 Blood Tithe point. That's fine if you want to make some sort of early game first turn gambit that you're going to do, but it's nowhere near as good over the course of the game as having a priest, so Firebrand will be the one that you take all of the time. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Also on your army list, you're going to be able to give one of your heroes an artifact of power. There are 3 to choose from. And the best one is quite clearly Argath, the King of Blades. This is already a really famous magic item that existed in Age of Sigmar before. Use this in any combat phase, which does mean every combat phase. And you pick an enemy hero in combat with this unit to be the target. Ward rolls can be made for the target for the rest of the turn. Normally, I would say that the stipulation of being a hero makes this less effective than you would want it to be. And that is true. That is true. Only heroes. However, as we've seen from many of these reviews, it really feels like a centerpiece edition, where there are a lot of large, monstrous heroes that are bringing allegiance abilities are locked in with them, or they're just bringing so much utility and support to the rest of the army that it feels like they're going to see a lot of play. I could be wrong, and that could be different, and therefore maybe you wouldn't take this. And normally those heroes also have a ward save. So this feels like a really good choice, especially on a big smashy monster. The next one is the Collar of Contempt, where this unit can use an unbind abilities as if it was a Wizard 1, and each time this unit unbinds a spell, you inflict D3 mortal damage on the caster. Genuinely, that's actually quite interesting, especially if you're going for like a lot more like small foot character heroes. This means this could be really dynamic in their ability to engage in what looks to be a game very orientated around manifestations and putting spells on the board. This is quite cool. And last one, is a passive called Halo of Blood, where you ignore the negative modifiers to this unit's control score to hit rolls, wound rolls, and this unit's attacks. There are a lot of ways to debuff the number of attacks, control score, and also negative, like there's a lot of like debuffing your abilities to hit. So that genuinely could end up making it into a list just because it's very, very simple. You don't have to think about it. It doesn't really add tons, but it just means your unit is always going to do exactly what it wants, which could be really nice. On your army list, you're going to get to choose a prayer law for your army, but you only have 1 to choose from, and so you will be choosing the Blood Blessings of Khorne. The way prayers work is that each priest in your army will know and have access to all 3 of the prayers on this list. If one of those prayers says unlimited, like it does, then each one of your wizards will be able to cast this over the course of a hero phase, where normally you can only cast a spell, chant a prayer once in a hero phase. So this is going to give you more utility to keep spamming the same one, but the same priest isn't going to be able to repeatedly do it. Okay, so the first one is Unholy Flames, and it's chanted on a 5. Pick a friendly Blades of Corn priest to chant this prayer, and pick a visible friendly Blades of Corn unit wholly within 12 inches. You add 1 to the Rend characteristic, which is already really nice, as we know we can stack that with Blood Tithe. And in addition, if the chant roll was 10+, add 1 to the Rune rolls, add 1 to the wound rolls for the target's attacks for the rest of the turn. So that's pretty good. You do want +1 to wound. +1 to wound is a really nice buff because that is going to be really effective if you have a lot of attacks. So 20 attacks with +1 to wound is better than like 5 attacks with +1 to wound. And obviously you're going to stack a lot of attacks in a Khorne army, so that's pretty nice. It's unlimited as well, so that means you're going to be able to give multiple units +1 rend, or maybe even multiple units +1 to wound. Enhanced effects, if you don't know for prayers, is when you do decide that you would like to do Unholy Flames with a priest, you'd roll a dice and you might get a 4. That's obviously not enough to do the prayer. So what you can do is you can put those ritual points to the side, and then you can keep adding to that until you finally get either over a 5 or you get to your enhanced effect, which is a 10. And that's why there are some enhanced values. If you ever roll a 1 on attempting to get some ritual points, then you'll lose D3 from the pool. You can also use a command ability to be able to do a prayer in your opponent's turn. Therefore, maybe doing one of these in your opponent's turn anyway, because the other is a little bit more achievable on a 4, but also maybe just to generate ritual points for yourself so you can do a more empowered effect in your turn. The next prayer is Witchbane Curse, and it's on a 4, so it's quite achievable achievable, and it's got a wicked range where you pick an enemy wizard within 18 inches. You subtract one from the target's power level, which is massive, absolutely massive. Even some of the most deadly wizards in the world, like a Lord of Change, are for some reason only a 2-cast wizard. This means the ability to just shut them down from a 2 to a 1, literally halving like the main reason they're there, seems pretty crazy. 18-inch range, excellent as well, and your opponent's not going to be able to stop that. This is just, you're just going to do it. In addition, if the chant roll was at 8 or more, you inflict 3 mortal damage onto the opponent as well. That feels very good and very strong as an anti-meta pick in your army, and I think you're going to see that used a lot. The last one, Blood Boil, is also on a 4, and you pick a Friendly Blades of Corn Priest to chant its prayer and pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches. So again, a significantly good range. You roll a number of dice equal to the number of models in the target unit. For each 5+, you inflict a mortal damage. In addition, if the chanting roll was 8 or more, you subtract 1 from the wound rolls to the target for the rest of the turn. These are all great prayers. They're not some of the best things you could see, like Strike Last or 3d6 charges, but I think the one that does mortal damage to wizards while also reducing their power level, combined with the artifact we looked at earlier where you can do additional mortal damage for unbinding stuff, could be really spicy, and I really like that as well. The plus to rend is nice, plus to wound is also good as well, so I think there's a load of good options here from your prayer lore. In Age of Sigmar 4, each army is able to bring manifestations or a manifestation lore with them. Uniquely, because you're playing Khorne, you probably won't be using any of the generic manifestations, and therefore you'll be using your unique manifestation lore. So you're going to want to pick them up from the store if you're planning to play with your Khorne army, or, you know, kit bash one, whatever you like. You haven't got to pay people money if you don't want to. There are 3 that you get to bring with you, and they're free in points. So you're definitely going to bring these, is what I'm trying to say. These are very good because they're free, because their cost is 0. Okay, so there are 3 to choose from. You got the Bleeding Icon, the Hex Gorge of Skulls, and the Wrath Axe. The Bleeding Icon, you set up wholly within 12 inches. The Hex Gorge of Skulls, you set up more than 9 inches from enemy units. 12 inches, wholly within 12 inches of the caster, and 8 inches away from each other. And the Wrath Axe is wholly within 12 inches and 9 inches away from the enemy. I just thought I'd bring that up here because they're presented in this fashion, and then you go look at the actual things that you manifest on a different one. I don't know why they're not on the same scroll. I feel they should be, but there are 3 to choose from. Let's go talk about them, and they're all raised on 4s. So the first of the manifestations we're going to look at is the Bleeding Icon, and it's fantastic. As I mentioned earlier, you're able to destroy manifestations. This is a static manifestation, which is different to some of the other manifestations which are moving. The moving ones can be used to zone out things like deep strikes and other stuff, and all of them are chargeable. So that's something you need to be conscious of. Don't make the mistake of putting a manifestation down and let your opponent charge it to grab an objective or get closer to your units. Anyway, the first one is Bleeding Icon with 8 health and a 4-up save, which is genuinely very survivable for a manifestation. That's actually quite nice. It's got a banishment value of 7, and the ability to get rid of it is then. What does it do? Well, it doesn't have any combat attacks, but it does have a reaction ability that when your opponent declares a command for a unit within 8 inches of this manifestation, the effect is that you roll 2d6 on an 8+, that command has no effect. It still counts as having been used, and the command point is still lost. This is an amazing ability. So some of the strongest commands that your opponents could do are things like Countercharge, which costs 2 command points for your ability, for the opponent's ability to charge in your turn. Some people are going to have whole game plans built up around the idea of using Countercharge. So the fact that you have a 40% chance to stop that command, as well as other commands available to them, is actually really significant. And that is a great item, considering it's free. All it requires is you to get a priest and put it on the board. So that is really excellent. The next manifestation that you set up wholly within 12 inches of the summoner and 9 inches away from the enemy is the Hex Gorge of Skulls, 6 health, 5-up save, and again, that banishment value of 7. It's an anti-magic tech piece where the Hex Gorges, for each part of this manifestation that's within 8 inches of a wizard, you subtract from the 1 from the casting rolls of the wizard. So not the power level, which is how many casts it can do, but the total of its casting rolls when it attempts to do a spell. This is okay. It's not super. It's not super good. The other ability just describes how if a part of it dies, then both die. This is definitely not what they once were, where they would just be blowing wizards up all over the place. It's got two attacks. It can fight, hitting on 2s, win on 4s, no rend damage D3. But probably this isn't going to be something that you utilize for anything other than blocking up the board and maybe creating some screens or being able to block off the board edge from deep strikes, because the ability is pretty weak source. The last manifestation is the Wrath Axe, and this is like a combat damage piece. It's got 7 health with a 5-up save, and it moves 8 inches. And then it's got 3 attacks, 3s and 2s, rend 2, damage D3. And if for nothing else, it's a free unit you can summon the board to do some combat damage, which is good, like, ultimately. Its ability, or its unique ability, is done in your movement phase, where you pick up to 3 enemy units that this manifestation passed across this turn to be the targets. You roll a d3 for each target, and on a 2+, you inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the roll. So got a really big base. Will it be able to move over 3 targets or any targets at all is a great question, because it's only got that movement value of 8. It does have the fly keyword, but it's going to really struggle maybe to do that. Ultimately, if it does do that and is able to do it, then you're going to do some mortal damage, and mortal damage for free is better than, you know, anything else. So that's pretty nice. But I think obviously that massive winner is the Bleeding Icon. So the first unit that we're going to look at is going to be Skarbrand. Like, I guess he's the leader of the Khorne faction, and he is an absolute melee powerhouse. He's got 16 health with a 4-up save and a 5-up ward save. So pretty much the basic stat line for what you would want from a frontline monster fighter. 3-up save would have been maybe a little bit overkill. He's got control value 5 like most monsters for holding an objective, and is able to move 8 inches up the board, which is fast enough, and definitely is going to be able to get in combat thanks to his passive Inescapable Wrath, where he adds 1 to the number of dice rolled when making a charge roll. So he's got what we would call a 3d6 charge, which is pretty impressive, meaning it's going to be very scary, as well as the other ways that you have for making units being able to move faster, like Murderlust up the board. What does he do in combat? Well, he's got 2 big old axes. The first one, Slaughter's got 4 attacks, which is 3s and 2s, rend 2, damage 4. We know that we can improve the rend on these via a prayer, so rend 3. And then Carnage has got 2 attacks, 3s and 2s, rend 2, damage 8. And this has got crit mortal. So any 6s to hit, it's going to do an absolutely stunning 8 mortal damage, which is crazy. 3s to hit is nice because +1 attack is going to, +1 to hit is going to make these 2s and 2s. Again, additional rend is really nice. And there is a way to get even more attacks with Slaughter because of Skarbrand's passive, Skarbrand's Rage, where while this unit has 10 or more damage points allocated to it, or if it did not use a fight ability in the last turn, or if it's the first turn of the battle, the attacks characteristic of Slaughter is 6. So that is a pretty whopping amount of damage, with 24 attacks potential out of Slaughter, 24 damage potential out of Slaughter, and 16 damage out of Carnage. Lastly, in the combat phase, he's got a Rampage, which is every combat phase, where you pick an enemy unit in combat with this unit to be the target. You roll 3 dice, and any 4-up are a mortal wound, or you roll a number of dice equal to the number of damage points allocated to this unit. So he's got 16 health, so there might be a situation where you get up to rolling 15 dice with every 4-up being a mortal damage. This is also a super nice Rampage because it's not key locked to infantry or monsters or anything. Skarbrand just hates everything and does a lot of damage, which I think is super good. Lastly, Skarbrand is a unique character, so you're going to take 1 Skarbrand in your army. He's also a War Master, which means if he's in your army, he needs to be the general, unlocking your general's regiment, which is what he does. Ultimately, he's just a fairly fast combat machine. Let me know what you think of Skarbrand, because I think he's really good. He is going to cost a lot of points, which seems fair, but where that a lot of points is going to be too much, like is going to really settle as to whether or not he gets taken, especially in comparison to other Bloodthirsters and other melee units that you can build in your Khorne force. The next non-named Bloodthirster is a Bloodthirster, or the Wrath of Corn Bloodthirster. It's got the same defensive profile as Skarbrand, 16 health, 4-up save, 5-up ward. In my opinion, a good defensive, like a good defense for a frontline melee bruiser. Very good. In combat, it's pretty good with 6 attacks with the Mighty Axe of Khorne and Bloodfale. Hits on a 3, wounds on a 2, Rend 2, unless you're fighting a hero, in which case it's Rend 3, and damage 4. So you're going to have to get really lucky to hit and wound with everything and get through all the saves to maybe kill some of the bigger monsters, but it's still really impressive and is going to really chew up some infantry and other stuff as well. Rend 2 is nice, especially as we know you get +1 Rend for Rend 3. Hellfire Breath is also a weapon that it's got, which is a missile weapon that's got range 8 inches, does 2d6 attacks, 2s, 3s, Rend 1, damage 1, and is shooting to combat, which is a legit good profile if you roll really high for just clearing a bunch of little models out the way. If this unit is damaged, it only gets 4 attacks on its Mighty Axe of Khorne. Now, the reason you definitely are going to take this Bloodthirster, I think, is because of its ability that's done in any combat phase once per turn, so you can't do this multiple times over a turn, with Commander of Tyrants, where you pick up to 3 other, so not itself, visible, friendly, non-unique Bloodthirster units to be the targets. You add 1 to the attack characteristic of each target's melee weapons for the rest of the turn. That's pretty good. That will scale really well with other Bloodthirsters. This also is really telling you to run 4 Bloodthirsters as an army, which I'm sure many of you do not need convincing to do. I bet many of you are like, Rob, I was already doing it. I didn't need someone to tell me to do it. But this effectively makes this a build that they're intending to happen so that you can pick 3 others, including this one, 3 others separate to this one, and get +1 to their attack characteristic. You aren't going to be able to do it to Scarbrand because it says non-unique Bloodthirsters. So that's the reason that you'll bring this specific Bloodthirster. It's also got an ability called Vengeance of Corn, which is done in any combat phase. And then you pick an enemy hero in combat with this unit to be the target, and you roll 8 dice. For each 4+, you inflict 1 mortal damage on the target. That's pretty nice, but again, it's really hero coded. There should be enough heroes in the game because that's how regiments are built, that this will work out in the right situation. But this guy wants to go and fight fight heroes, and is going to buff other Bloodthirsters. Our next Bloodthirster is my favorite, the Bloodthirster of Incense and Rage. He's got 16 health with a 4-up save and a 5-up ward save. The reason that you take this guy is because of the output. He's got 5 attacks that hit on 3s, wound on 2s, rend 2, and damage 5, and his anti-infantry +1 rend. That's an incredible profile. 25 damage, from one of these guys is very impressive, and he's going to chew up infantry, definitely. If he starts getting wounded, then that Great Axe of Corn goes down to 3 attacks. But it gets better because if you're only 6s to hit with the Great Axe of Corn, that will be a critical hit. And their passive, Outrageous Carnage, means that for each time an attack is made with this unit scores a critical hit, you inflict D3 mortal damage on each enemy unit within 8 inches after the fight ability has been resolved. This is obviously stunning, because if you were to run a couple of these and to roll more than 2 6s, then that means many units are going to take multiples of D3 mortal damage, which is pretty exciting, to be honest. Obviously, you can bring the previous Bloodthirster to add +1 to the attacks for this, so you could easily have 6 attacks that are doing damage 5 and really bump up their effectiveness, which is good. Lastly, Shattering Charge is the ability you can do in the charge phase, where if this unit charges this turn, pick an enemy unit within an inch, roll a dice on a 2+, inflict that amount of mortal damage, and if it's infantry, then it inflicts 3 mortal damage. That's obviously super good because it's done in the charge phase as well, so it might be done before your enemy gets to swing. It will be done before your enemy gets to swing, which is really effective to be able to put some wounds on a unit early. Ultimately, I really like this Bloodthirster, same as the other Bloodthirsters in survivability, but it's just got the opportunity to just do outrageous damage, and therefore it seems really fun to use. The next Bloodthirster is a Bloodthirster of Unfettered Fury, and I know I struggle to tell them apart as well. This Bloodthirster has got the same survivability as the others, with 16 health, 4-up save, and a 5-up ward save, moves fast with movement 12, and is still good in combat with 6 attacks that are damage 4 at rend 2, and then +1 rend against monsters. It's got an okay shooting attack as well, which can be done into combat, which is 4 attacks, damage D3, which is all great. It really is. But the reason you're probably going to bring it, if you're going to bring it for any reason, is because the Beckon Hunt ability, where you pick a friendly non-unique Blades of Corn demon unit to be the target, which could be your Bloodthirsters, or a Bloodthirster. And for the rest of the turn, add 1 to the number of dice rolled when making charge rolls to the target to a maximum of 3. And obviously, this is also work really well on Bloodletters or any of the other, Corn demon units that aren't just a Bloodthirster. I know I've been talking about those a lot. But then also a Bloodthirster getting 3d6 charge is nice, especially if you combo that with Scarbrand for 2 units charging 3d6, which is really going to threaten your opponent, especially with command abilities like Counter Charge available to you. This is only in your charge phase for the 3d6 charge, but still very interesting. Lastly, he's got a Rampage, which is done once per turn in your combat phase, where you pick an enemy monster, and when that monster decides to use a fight ability, it must pick this unit, so this Bloodthirster, to beat its target. And when it does, it takes -1 from its hit rolls and wound rolls for the attacks made as part of that fight ability. So you get to basically make that monster fight you, and in addition, you get to reduce its effectiveness. This could be really good if your opponent is holding an objective, wants to take an objective and kill an infantry unit, and you decide to drag it away. Maybe your opponent has even chosen a battle tactic to kill a specific unit for its battle tactics and stops that as well. Any of those are pretty effective, and so this guy is really good. I feel like this maybe is a unit that works better with a non-Bloodthirster build, but I think it is still very good and nice utility piece to have in the army. Our next hero is Karak, which is a pretty interesting demon unit that you can have that hunts down its enemy. With 7 health, a 5-up save, and a 6-up ward save. In combat, it's kind of okay with 6 attacks that do hit on 4s, which is a bit sad. And then wounds on a 3, rend 1, damage 2, and it's got an extra rend against hero. During the deployment phase, you can use the ability Prayer of the Blood God, where you pick an enemy hero to be this unit's quarry, and you can pick a hero in reserve. You can pick a hero that's in reserve. And then in the enemy movement phase, if this unit's quarry moved this phase, this unit can move up to 8 inches. It cannot move into combat during any part of that move, must end that move close to the quarry. That's pretty nice, especially as then you will obviously be able to do a counter charge to try and chase that quarry down. Ultimately, I'm not sure if that is a massively effective ability, because the attack profile is pretty weak sauce, 6 attacks, damage 2. But it's a really fun ability, and I definitely could see either club games or even going to an event and intending to just see how many preys you could hunt down with Karak being a really enjoyable part of your hobby. It's also got a passive, which is going to benefit Fleshhound units, called First of the Pack. While this unit is wholly within 12 inches of a friendly Fleshhound unit, add 2 to charge rolls for this unit, and in addition, while any friendly Fleshhound units are wholly within 12 inches of this unit, they can ignore the effect of the Beast ability. The Beast ability is the ability to control objectives, where a unit of Fleshhounds is only a control value of 1, control score of 1, no matter how many models are in that unit. Karak himself is a control value of 2, and the way you hold objectives is by having multiple, the highest control score versus your opponent, and you make that control score up of units that you've put onto objectives. So making it so Fleshhounds are playable and viable is super interesting, and a reason you bring Karak. I quite like him. I really do. I think he's not necessarily mega effective, but he seems really fun to play, like we've seen with some Soul-like characters and stuff, especially if he ends up being cheap enough so that you could just have this little mini game to yourself. Our next unique demon hero is the Skull Taker. The next one's the Blood Pumper. Anyway, the Skull Taker is a demon melee hero with 7 health, 4-up save. We've got 6 attacks in combat. It hits on 2s, wounds on 3s. So very effective profile. Rend 2, again, unless it's against heroes, in which case it's Rend 3. And then damage 2. Survivability is okay with, like I say, with 7 health, 4-up save, and a 5-up ward save. So he's a really good frontline duelist character for a unique hero. Unique means you're going to take one of them. He's also pretty good in his unique role. In his combat phase, he's got the Hero's Bane, where you pick an enemy hero and combat this unit. For the rest of the turn, while this target is in combat with this unit has strike first, but all combat attacks it makes must target the enemy hero. That's fun, because you really want to guarantee this guy fights that hero, thanks to the next passive, Skulls of the Skull Throne, where each time an enemy hero is slain by this unit, you receive 1 additional Blood Tithe point. I like all of those abilities, and I think it's really, really fun to have a unit whose job it is just go fighting heroes and killing them, and you gain a bonus. There's a bit of a sad bit that we just got from Karak, that while it's got a unit, it's got a hero to hunt, you don't get anything if you finally hunt that hero down. This is actually really rewarding for taking the skull, because you actually get a bonus for your army. It's like a completion of a quest, which I think is super fun. I would adore to run the Skull Taker in a Khorne army, just trying to achieve its Skulls for the Skull Throne ability. So if it's cheap enough, or if I thought my army was already effective enough and I just wanted a really fun and engaging unit, this is absolutely awesome. Narrative bros, this should absolutely be like the first thing you write into your Khorne list, because it's so emblematic of like what a Khorne army is. So great unit in my opinion. The first of our demon priests. So already, whatever points the Bloodmaster Herold of Corn costs, you gotta remember that it's a priest and it's gonna bring that utility to your army that's really valuable. Like I would always say that like a priest or a wizardly level should be somewhere between like 100 and 120 points. So just that alone, and then take off whatever else it does. So that's a really effective like points cost. So priest, great. 6 health, 4-up save. That's pretty survivable as well. A lot of wizards and priests normally have much worse saves, and also has got a ward save. And is okay in combat, same as every profile in Age of Sigmar for some hero. 5 attacks, damage 2, which is cool. Anti-infantry, rend 2, and crit mortal, so pretty nice. Statistically, that's actually better than a tree lord for a Sylvaneth army, so you're in a good spot there from a damage profile for like, you know, a little character. And it's also got a really cool ability called the Blood Must Flow, where you declare a fight ability with this unit. This means that a unit of Bloodletters that has not used a fight ability this turn and is in combat range, so 3 inches with this unit, they're going to be able to fight, and when they use their fight ability, any attacks that they use are going to reduce the ward save of the unit they're attacking by 1, which is wicked. That is so good. Ward saves are really nice after armor saves, which help reduce a lot of damage. Some units are pointed to have good ward saves, and therefore having this unit, or specifically a Bloodlet unit, which could be massive with loads of extra attacks, be able to reduce the ward save down is really, really cool. So I can see the Bloodmaster making it into a lot of Khorne armies, especially those running big blood letter bricks. Our next hero is the Skullmaster, the Herold of Corn, and he is on a Juggernaut of Corn, as I like to call it, a Jugs. Anyway, he's got a 6-up ward save as well, and of course is a hero. And then he's got 5 attacks in close combat with anti-infantry, crit mortal. He's okay. 7 health, 4-up save. He's okay. Movement 8. Okay. Really, his job is to be there as a support piece thanks to his Herald of Trampling Death ability, where you pick a friendly unit of Blood Crushers units within combat range of this unit, and for the rest of the turn, that unit has +1 damage on the charge. This is only once per battle, though, so it's like a one-and-done situation. And so it's whether or not you think having a unit of Blood Crushers are going to be able to have, like, having +1 damage on their charge is going to be mega effective as to why you'll bring this guy. In addition, he's got his own ability in the charge phase called Slaughterer's Charge, where you'll do D3 mortal damage on the charge on a 2+. So you'll do either 2 or 3 mortal damage. If you're running Blood Crushers, you're running this guy. If you're not running Blood Crushers, you won't take this guy. Our next hero is the Herald of Corn, and this time he's on a Blood Throne. And I feel like this is going to be a quintessential element in an all-demons list. Is a level 1 priest as well, so you're going to be able to do all of the support that you gain from priests. 6-up ward save with 10 health and a 4-up save. I would say this guy could definitely be close to the front lines and isn't going to be immediately picked up, which is exactly what you want with like a combat frontline priest. Also, like, okay in combat with 7 attacks, 3s and 3s, rend 1, +1 rend against infantry, and then damage 2. All of these have got crit mortals, so that's nice. Even if you, like, just Hail Mary into, like, a really well-armored unit, you roll big, you could be lifting models, which you'd really like. But the reason that you are going to take a Herald of Corn on Bloodthrone if you're running an all-demon force is because if it's once per turn across the army ability that you do in your movement phase, you pick a friendly Blazercorn demon unit that started the battle with 3 or more models and that's been destroyed. You roll dice, and on a 4-up, you set up a replacement unit with half the number of models on the target you can round it up, wholly within 12 inches unit, and more than 9 inches from all enemy units. So if you are running 20 Bloodletters, you are running the Blood Throne, regardless of its points, because it means that that unit of 20 is going to come back on a 4-up as a 10. There's been lots of units in the game where the key allegiance abilities or key abilities your army wants are really locked into these centerpiece models, and that is no different to this unit. And that's why having a good armor save and being okay in a little bit of a fight is actually really beneficial for this unit specifically. because you're going to be using, this is going to be a lodestone around which your army builds. So it's quite interesting. Maybe you're going to try and protect your skull altar. Maybe you're going to be trying to protect this piece more than anything. You could always bring 2 for safety in case one gets killed, but you can only ever use this ability once across the army. Anyway, if you're running Bloodletters, you're running a bunch of demons, you will definitely be running this unit because of that ability. Our first mortal priest is the Realm Gore Ritualist. It's got 5 health, 5 up save, and is not a demon, so this bad boy does not have a ward save. Like we said, he's a priest, so that's his job and his utility, with 1 attack in close combat that does d6 damage, which is pretty spicy. But the reason you're going to bring him is because of his ability, Desecrating Blood Runes, which you can use once per battle in your movement phase. You pick an objective or terrain feature within this unit's combat range, so within 3 inches. And for the rest of the battle, you add 1 to hit rolls for combat attacks made by friendly blood-bound units where they're wholly within 12 inches of the target. Blood-bound refers to the mortal units in the army, and that means that they're all going to get +1 to hit. Now, what's quite nice about this is Age of Sigmar 4, the missions that come in the General's Handbook or General's Hand deck, has a flip side where it shows you terrain maps. You don't have to use those terrain maps, but because probably lots of people will use terrain maps and also they'll be used at events, that means you'll be able to pre-plan roughly where you'd like to be able to do this ability and see if it'll be effective. Are the 5 missions that you're going to be playing at the weekend or the game you're playing with your friend later, meaning that the terrain is going to be close enough for the +1 to hit aura to be effective? Is that where the main point of engagement is going to be? That means you can pre-plan it a bit, which really increases the effectiveness of this unit. Plus, that persistent +1 to hit means you don't have to spend command points or getting +1 to hit from all-out attack. So you can use your command points for better utility abilities like countercharge. So ultimately, I feel it's pretty good. Our next mortal character is not a priest. The mighty Lord of Corn has got 7 health with a 3 up save with no ward save. And it's okay in combat with 5 attacks, damage 2 at Ren 2, but no crit mortals. And his Flesh Hound has got 4 attacks, but they're only damage 1. The reason that you would take this unit is for a couple of reasons. Number 1, he's got a passive called Lord of the Bloodbound, where you add 1 to charge rolls for Bloodbound infantry where they're wholly within 12 inches. It's pretty nice. Make longer charges or make more reliable charges. In addition, once per combat phase, in your combat phase, so not the opponent's, you can pick a friendly Gore chosen unit wholly within 12 inches. That target has strike first for the rest of the turn. That might end up being massively consequential to your army list building and also your army, because there's lots of strike last and strike first effects. In the combat phase, what happens is after both players have done their combat abilities, which starts with the active player doing all of theirs and the inactive player doing all of theirs, what happens is you then fight with units starting with the active player, and you start fighting at different stages. First, use all the strike first units, then use all the median units, and then use all the strike last units. So this does mean that in your combat phase, strike first unit will definitely strike before the enemy in any situation. So you'll be able to have this massive, big impact, and then also fight, because the active player always picks the units first at each step. So this could mean that you get to fight more than 2 times before your opponent gets to fight at all. So it's actually a pretty impactful change, especially if you're trying to tool up a big Gore chosen unit. So pretty good unit. The next unit we're going to look at is a cavalry combat character, the Lord of Corn on Juggernaut. Now, he's got a pretty interesting profile, and he's got 8 health on a 2 up save. Moves 8 inches, control value 2, and he's got a good combat profile with 6 attacks, damage 2, and 2 from his mount doing D3. It's fine, but he's not going to kill loads of stuff. That's not his job. His job, if he has one, is using the passive, the Lord of the Brass Steed, where if this unit charges turn for the rest of the turn, the following effects apply to friendly Blades of Corn cavalry units with a wholly within 18 inches. Add 1 to charge rolls for those units, and you can reroll the crushing charge rolls for those units, which is the impact hits or the mortal wound damage they do on the charge. Mortal damage that they do on the charge. He's got his own mortal damage on the charge called Slaughterous Charge, where any charge phase, if this unit charges turn, pick an enemy within an inch, or roll a d3, and on a 2+, inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the roll. So he's going to make the mortal damage that a bunch of cavalry do that much more effective. Now, I don't think that's going to end up being overwhelming personally, but one of the things I do quite like about this unit, depending on points, is his ability to pin enemy units. Murderlust is going to be a thing in the game, and 8 health on a 2-up save is a pretty prodigiously survivable profile for being able to keep, a single model pinning units in using Murderlust, which I know is a little bit more limited in how much you can use it, but it's still an option for do it because he's a good pinning unit. A pinning unit would be something that's stopping your opponent going somewhere. Why would you want to stop your opponent going somewhere? Because they might be wanting to go towards an objective, they might be wanting to go towards a battle tactic, or they might just want to be trying to reposition their army. And stopping someone from doing that is actually quite an effective role. The Secator is our banner character in this army and is really, really cool. 6 health with 3-up save, so good and survivable for a support character, with 4 attacks at damage 2 in combat, which is inconsequential. Importantly, because he's carrying a big old flag, he's control value 5 for holding an objective, which is nice, especially as it's always going to be near friendly infantry units because he's going to be supporting them with his abilities. His first ability is a passive called Icon of the Blood God, where if a friendly bloodbound unit holier than 12 inches this unit makes the rally command, you can make 3 additional rally rolls of a d6. In Age of Sigmar, in every hero phase, you can spend 1 command point to do a rally. Pick a unit, you roll 6 dice, any 4-ups, you can put that much health back into the unit if it's like a monster that's wounded, or for every health point that you rally back, you're able to put a slain model back up to that health value. So what I mean by that is if I end up rolling 6 dice in and get 3 4-ups, then I can either put 3 1-wound models back, 1 2-wound model back, or 1 3-wound model back. Rolling 9 dice is actually really effective because you're adding 3 from this guy, because then you can put more models back into that unit or return a few more elite models to that unit, like Wrathmongers as an example. So that's actually really nice, and especially as it's a passive. The next ability is once per battle for the whole army in any combat phase, you add 1 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly bloodbound units for the rest of the turn. We already know that there's a way to get +1 attack as well if you use 8 Blood Tithe points, so maybe making this one single massive punch is really good. In addition, you do not need to be in range of those units to make this happen. So those units can charge off. They don't need to be wholly within range. You just scream the Rage of Khorne and +1 attacks on all your bloodbound units, because that will just be massively impactful for the turn in which you're doing the big punch. You're sending everything in, you're making units maybe strike first, and then bang, you're doing a big amount of attacks. Our next combat melee character in Khorne is Scar Bloodwrath. He's pretty unique as well. 7 health with a 4-up save. Got 6 attacks in close combat, which are 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 2. It doesn't have a ward save, so there's that. Now, he's pretty important because he has his fun ability called the Slaughterborn. In any movement phase, if this unit has been destroyed, you can use his ability to bring him back. You roll 2d6, and on an 8+, you set up a replacement unit on the battlefield more than 9 inches from all enemy units. The key word there is replacement, because in the core rules it does say that a replacement unit itself cannot be replaced. So that means that he's only going to be able to come back from the dead once. That is actually quite important, though, because as well as his role as a frontline melee fighter, which he does okay, he's going to generate a Blood Tithe when he's slain, and when he's slain the second time, that's his second Blood Tithe point. And that's pretty nice for helping you get up to maybe that big 8 so you can return a Bloodthirster. In addition, he also supports Wrathmonger units thanks to the Murderous Paragon ability, where if this unit is in combat, you add 1 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons used by Wrathmongers while they're wholly within 12 inches. Now, that does mean that you could use Blood Tithe, which is all 8 Blood Tithe, and also the once per battle ability from the Secator for +3 attacks on some Wrathmongers. That's only going to happen in a single turn, but you might be able to do just an absolutely insane amount of attacks, which is good. And then this is going to be all Wrathmonger units that are in range of him as well. So this is going to benefit multiple units, which I think is fun. So yeah, I like that a lot. I think he's really cool. I think he's really unique. It's nice to see he's got the return from the dead thing, and that stayed in there. Really cool little unit. The next unit we'll look at is the Slaughter Priest. Probably going to be a unit you have in almost every army for a couple of different reasons. Number 1, it's got 6 health, 5-up save, moves 5 inches, control value 2, but importantly is a level 1 priest. Therefore, it's going to be able to do all the things all the other priests do. Unlike other priests, though, he's got a passive called Scorn of Sorcery, where this unit can use the Unbind abilities as if it were a wizard. This effectively gives him a dual use, which is already really effective, and then he's got an ability called Blood Sacrifice, which you can do once per turn in your hero phase. You pick a friendly unit with this unit's combat range to be the target, and obviously can pick himself. Roll a d3, and on a 2+, you inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the roll, and then you gain a Blood Tithe point. So whether or not this guy is going to be sitting inside of your Khorne altar, or even following your army around, you're going to be generating Blood Tithe for free off this guy, which is super effective. And in addition, you're going to be unbinding spells and also casting prayers. Those are all fantastic, and therefore this feels like one of the most condensed utility pieces that we've seen so far in the Khorne roster. So I think, get yourself a Slaughter Priest and use this all the time. Our next hero is an interesting anti-monster support piece in the Skull Grinder, wielding a massive anvil that he throws around. 6 health with a 3-up armor save is pretty nice for a frontline melee character, with 4 attacks each that are damage 3, and they've got rend 1, but they're anti-monster rend 1, so it's going to be rend 2. As if that wasn't enough, and his ability to shut down monsters is improved by the Bone Crushing Strikes passive. If this unit uses a fight ability, all of the attacks target the same enemy monster, and any of the attacks score a critical hit, that monster has strike last for the rest of the turn. Now, with only 4 attacks, it's probably going to be more often than not, you're not going to get that ability. And so relying on it is a little bit weaker than you would want it to be, but it is nice to have in there. In addition, he's got a once per battle in the army ability that you do in the deployment phase, where you pick another friendly bloodbound hero within 8 inches of this unit to be the target. You pick one of the target's melee weapons, you add one to the rends characteristic. I quite like this on Scar Bloodwrath because he's going to come back from the dead, and so that +1 rend, making him rend 2, means he's going to be more effective over a few turns, which is quite fun. But are you really going to buy the Skull Grinder points-wise and put him in your list just for +1 rend on one hero? Maybe, maybe not. It really depends. Let me know if you will do. Our next unit is the Aspiring Deathbringer, and he is a combo melee piece that is going to work really well with Blood Warriors. 6 health with a pretty great, fantastic 3-up save. In combat, it's got 7 attacks, which are damage 2, which is also nice as well, but no special abilities and only rend 1. The reason that you would take this character is because you want to use the Furious War Leader ability, which you do in, you declared a fight ability for this unit. And pick a friendly Blood Warriors unit that has not used a fight ability this turn and is within this unit's combat range. Then that unit can immediately fight, so this is a fight immediately at the same time. And if it's picked to do so, you add 1 to wound rolls to attacks made by this unit for the rest of the turn. Obviously, this is a great force multiplier. This is very common in Age of Sigmar 4 now, where what they want to do is if you want to improve the output of your infantry units, or even your cavalry units, you're going to multi-charge them in with these small foot heroes. This character, unlike some of the other characters we've seen across different armies, has got a pretty good chance of making it with 6 health and a 5-up save. 6 health with a 3-up save, which is pretty nice. But is +1 to wound going to be enough of a buff that you're going to put points into him and then make sure you're able to get that multi-charge off? Because if you only charge with one of the units, the other unit doesn't make it, then you're going to lose all of that effectiveness. So it's going to be really hard to work, but you do get a massive bonus for doing it. The Exatic Deathbringer is a super fun unit, mainly because of how Age of Sigmar 4 army lists are constructed. So, the Exatic Deathbringer is a single model hero that's good in combat with 6 health, 5-up save, and a 5-up ward save. And that makes it a little bit more survivable for our frontline melee characters. In combat, the Deathbringer weapon is 4 attacks, hits on 4s, sad noises, wounds on a 3, is only rend 1, but is damage 3. Okay, so it's not a particularly impressive stat line, although 4 attacks, damage 3 is much more than many heroes we've seen in Age of Sigmar. So why is it so impressive? Well, it's because of this ability First of the Gore Chosen and how it works. First of the Gore Chosen, it happens at the end of any turn, and if any damage points were allocated to an enemy unit by this unit's combat attacks, so that's all you have to do, and then that enemy unit has been destroyed, this unit immediately heals 5 of its 6 health, so basically is returned to full health. And this unit is given a Glorious Ascent token. The reason that that's important is that the end of any turn ability is not locked to once per army. Therefore, if you were to have multiple of these guys in a row, and they all were to contribute to the destruction of a unit, they would all gain Glorious Ascent token. Or if you charge this unit in with just, a big powerhouse unit like 20 bloodletters, and they might wiped out most of the unit, but you did a little bit of damage, this unit would return to full health and in addition have a Glorious Ascent token. let's move on to the next step, where the passive Glorious Ascent lets us add +1 to the attacks characteristic of the unit's Deathbringer weapon for each Glorious Ascent token. So now you can see what we're doing. You have 5 of these, and that is a pretty reasonable assumption that it's not too expensive. If you were to have 10, you'd start to get into meme categories, but probably you would still be able to have most of an actual normal army. The idea is that you charge them all into the same unit. That unit gets wiped out either because just these 5 or 10 of them have been fighting them, which would be 40 attacks damage 3 if it was 10, or 20 attacks damage 3 if it was 5. But maybe you combo charge them with another unit like a Bloodthirster or something else. And if you get the opportunity to give your opponent strike last, then everything could hit before that unit strikes you back. Either way, that unit is wiped out, and each one of the units each one of the Exalted Deathbringers will heal to full, and then get +1 attacks to its profile. And then you just keep snowballing that process, which would be very effective. If you were to just get 2 Glorious Ascent tokens and you had 5 of these guys, that would mean they'd have 6 attacks each, damage 3, which is pretty impressive. Genuinely very impressive. They've also got the Bloodbound keyword, so could benefit from plus attacks from other abilities that we've seen previously, as well as obviously being able to use Tithe for plus attacks as well. So you could get a lot of attacks from just general buffs in addition to this, and just absolutely go hunting, which is great. The next hero we're going to look at is the Bloodstoker with 5 health, 4 save. And the reason you're going to bring the Bloodstoker is because of its once per turn ability to do in your movement phase. It's once per turn for the army, so only one of your Bloodstokers is going to be able to do it. Using Whip to Fury, you can pick a friendly non-hero Bloodbound unit with this unit's combat range to be the target. For the rest of the turn, the target can use charge abilities even after it used a run ability. This is great, especially with all your punchy combat units like Skull Reapers. So being able to make them run and charge is going to make them super fast and very effective. So a great unit and a great support piece if you want to make your slower infantry units move further across the board. So the first non-hero unit we're going to look at are Bloodletters. Bloodletters have got 10 models per unit with 2 health each, a 5 save, and a 6 ward save for 20 health in a unit of 10. They can be reinforced to a unit of 20 for 40 health, which is pretty impressive. But the 5 save and the 6 ward save is meaning you're going to definitely need to make sure this unit can not get slapped too hard before it hits other units. And it does hit other units pretty hard with 2 attacks per model, hit on 3s, wound on 3s, rend 1, damage 1, but they all have crit mortals, which is obviously fantastic. So there's a lot of attacks doing crit mortals. Also, as we know, if you take a Blood Throne, you got the opportunity to make this unit, if it does get killed, be brought back from the dead, which is pretty nice. So I think just a very standard infantry unit, great for holding objectives because you can have a lot of bodies on the board. But thanks to their end of any turn ability, the Thinning Veil, if this unit is in combat, you can return D3 slain models to this unit. Now, D3 slain models and those models being 2 health each is pretty effective because that could be up to 6 health every turn, which is really nice. And if they're not in combat, you're going to be able to use the rally ability as well to potentially bring some of these back. So these are very chunky, very survivable, and they're going to do a lot of damage. So I love this unit. I think it's good. Sometimes people get a little bit disappointed with units like this. Let me just put this in another like frame of mind for yourself. If you have a unit of 20, that would be 40 health. So just think of a 40 health Mega Gargant with a 5 save and a 6 ward save, and then returning up to 6 health at the end of every turn. Once you start looking at that for like a points comparison perspective, I think they start to make a lot of sense as a unit, and they seem really good. Next unit we'll look at are Fleshhounds. Fleshhounds come in a unit of 5 models with each model in the each model in the unit having 2 health each. They got 5 save and they move 8 inches, which is pretty fast. Thanks to their passive Unflagging Hunters, you get to add 2 to their charge rolls. So you could be pretty quick and get into a charge position they need to be. When they get there, that's probably when things go downhill because you got 5 models with 4 attacks each, hit on 4s, wound on 3s, no rend, damage 1, and they're anti-wizard 1. But you're only ever going to take this unit if you take Karak, who I'm already not that hot on, because they are beasts, which means each model in this unit, no matter how many models you have in this unit, the entire unit is only going to count for 1 for holding an objective. So if you ever reinforce this unit to a unit of 10, that is going to be 40 attacks, which is pretty impressive. But they're still going to only count for 1 for holding an objective. And ultimately, you're normally fighting over or near objectives, because the idea is to control those objectives. Maybe being a little bit faster, their job is going to be doing battle tactics, running to board edges, table quarters, those sorts of things, and not really engaging in the fight. But if you can find a unit that both engages in the fight and achieves battle tactics, it's probably going to be a little bit more effective than the Fleshhounds. Our next unit are Blood Crushers. This is a kind of heavy cavalry unit. They come as a unit of 3 models, with each one of that unit having 5 health, that moves 8 inches, and they got 4 up save. You've got a control value of 2 each, so the unit can be a control value of 6, which isn't too bad. Can obviously be reinforced to a big old unit of 6. So 6 would be a pretty chunky unit with 30 health inside of it on a 4 up save, 6 up ward save. What they do is, I guess their job is to charge in and do a ton of damage, but that's only going to work when you take them in conjunction with the Herold that's also mounted, because he gives them +1 damage on the charge. If it wasn't for that, the Blood Crusher Hellblade is pretty unimpressive, with 2 attacks that does have crit mortals, 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 1. If you compare this to other elite 3 model units, I mean Varangard being the kings, Iron Jaws being pretty weak source in comparison, and a bunch of other models in between, these are definitely verging more towards the Iron Jaws Gore Grunters, because they're pretty underwhelming when they come to combat. The Juggernaut has got 2 attacks that are damage D3 as well. Lastly, they do mortal wound impact hits on the charge in any charge phase, which again, if you take with the other Herald, you're going to be able to re-roll. But I think just the sheer limited amount of attacks that you see come from the Blood Crusher Hellblade means I'm not that impressed. But maybe their job is something different. Maybe their job is just to get stuck and lobbed in combat with that 15 health, 4 up save, and just keep doing ongoing combat damage and not be this cavalry impact hit cavalry. So that's quite interesting. Please let me know what you think about Blood Crushers, because I'm not super hot about them. Our next unit is the Skull Cannon. So this is the artillery piece that you can bring in your Blades of Corn force. 8 health, 4 up save, and a 6 up ward save. Its main profile is its Burning Skull shooting attack, which has got 4 attacks, hit on 4s, wound on 3s, only rend 1, and D3 damage. However, you can shoot this more than once. Obviously, you can shoot this in your opponent's turn with a command ability, but in addition, there's a passive called Grind Their Bones, Seize Their Skulls, which, if an enemy model is slain by a fight ability used by this unit, after that fight ability has been resolved, you can use a shoot ability as if it were your shooting phase. And this is a passive that's usable on multiple skull cannons. So if you were to have 2 or 3, you could shoot, I don't know, let's say 3. You could shoot all 3, charge them in, fight, kill a model, only stipulation, which is nice, kill a model, and then shoot again. So I feel like that's a pretty productive amount of damage. However, if we go back to the profile, it's 4 attacks hitting on 4s. Therefore, it's probably not actually going to do a lot of damage, if anything at all. They've also got a passive called Gruesome Bombardment, which might be another reason to take them, where if any damage points are allocated to an enemy by a shoot ability used by this unit, you subtract 3 from the enemy's control score for the rest of the turn. That, again, is pretty nice if you do this on multiple units to really affect who can and who can't control objectives. But I think the output on it is probably too low because it's hitting on 4s. Our next unit is the Claws of Karak, and they are a Warcry warband, therefore they're not reinforceable. They have got 8 models in the unit, and each model in the unit has only got 1 health with a 5 up save. The reason that you would take this unit is thanks to their deployment phase ability, the Scent of Blood. This unit could use a normal move ability as if it were a movement phase. The reason this is really good is because it creates what we call a zone or a screen in front of your army. If you have 2 units of Claws of Karak, they'll be able to pre-game move up into the middle of the board, or deployment phase move into the middle of the board, meaning if your opponent is going to have like a really long bomb charge army that's going to run across the board in the first turn and charge you and hit you, this is going to defeat that tactic and allow them to break upon your army, and then you can countercharge. Themselves, not too bad in combat, with each model in the unit having 3 attacks each. So that does mean that unit of 8 is going to have 24 attacks. And thanks to the passive Pack Hunters, with critical 2 hits. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. And thanks to the passive Pack Hunters, while this unit is wholly within 12 inches of friendly unit of Fleshhounds, which might be a reason to bring them, they'll get critical hits on 5s. So that's a lot of attacks with critical hits on 5s. They've also got the Bloodbound keyword, so they do have the opportunity to produce a lot of additional attacks on this unit. So you could really produce a ton of damage, or at least a ton of dice rolls. They're going to be really rubbish into armor, as they don't have any rend, but really good into hordes of, let's say, zombies, if they end up being a problem. So super interesting unit, and it's a shame Warcry warbands can't be reinforced. Our next unit are Blood Reavers. Now, Blood Reavers are just shirtless lunatics, and they come as a unit of 10 models, and each one of that unit has only got 1 health and a 6-up save. So, shirtless lunatics. The control value 1, they move 5 inches, so they're a slow infantry unit that is pretty unsurvivable, but could do a lot of attacks. So they've got this passive called Blood for the Blood God, where add 1 to the Ren's characteristic of this unit's melee weapons for the rest of the turn if the unit charged for the same turn. Their weapon profile is 2 attacks each that hits on 4s, sad noises, wounds on a 3 with no rend unless they have done that charge, and they are damage 1. But we know that we can get multiple pluses to the attacks. We could use Blood Tithe to get an additional attack, or we could use Blood Tithe for an additional rend. We can also use a prayer ability to get an additional rend. So we could potentially have Blood Reavers, Blades and Axes with additional attacks. Maybe, I think we can get up to 2 additional attacks. So a unit of 10 would be 40, but a unit of 20 Blood Reavers would be 80 attacks, hitting on 4s, although we could use all that attack for hitting on 3s, wounded on 3s, and have them be rend 3 on the charge, damage 1. It's a lot of attacks at rend 3. A lot of attacks at rend 3. The problem is if you hit the Blood Reavers first, because they're just going to melt. The other problem is that they're slow. So you're going to have to work really hard to make this unit work super well, but it can maybe work really well. The next unit we'll look at are Wrathmongers, and that's pretty important because they're not only a melee frontline unit, they're also a support piece for the rest of your army. So you get a unit of 5 Wrathmongers, and so each model in that unit has got 3 health each on a 5-up save, and they move 5 inches. The Wrath Flails that they've got have got 4 attacks each, 4s and 3s, rend 1, damage 1, with crit 2 hits. They're also a Bloodbound unit, and we talked about this already, but there's a lot of ways to get extra attacks on this Bloodbound unit. But guess what? This unit is also great for giving out extra attacks, thanks to the Crimson Haze passive. While this unit is in combat, add 1 to the attack characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly Bloodbound units, excluding Wrathmonger units while they're wholly within 12 inches. So, the other ways that we talked about getting additional attacks on Bloodbound units, these guys are going to add on to that as well. So they feel like they're going to be very important. In addition, they've got the Blood Fury passive, where each time an unmodified hit roll of a combat attack that targets unit is a 1, you inflict 1 mortal damage on the attacking unit after the fight ability has been resolved. So a unit of 5 is going to be 15 health. 5-up save is pretty weak, but a unit of 10 is going to, big 30 health, and a unit of 10 means that potentially, if you're a Blood Secretor, there are at least 5 attacks each with 50 attacks on crit 2s. 4s and 3s, rend 1, damage 1. We know we can improve the rend there. We can add +1 to the rend from prayers. So that's going to be a unit that maybe could just absolutely rifle through stuff, which is pretty impressive. But they're also a support unit that's going to add +1 to the other units, and I love these guys. We've been talking a lot about the killing power in the Khorne force, but the Blood Warriors, in my opinion, represent the perfect anvil for holding objectives. So it's a unit that can take a lot of damage. Blood Warriors have got a unit of 10 models, and each one of that unit has got 2 health on a mighty 3-up armor save. They move 5 inches, so they're on the slower side, and they've got a control value of 1. But a reinforced unit of Blood Warriors is obviously going to be 40 health on the 3-up save. And that is going to be something that's going to take a long time to remove off an objective, especially because Battle Shock is no longer a thing in Age of Sigmar 4. So you got to ask yourself, can you just hit 40 damage against a 3-up save? And the answer for most units is no. What is it? What do they equip with? Well, each model in the unit has got a Gorax with 3 attacks each, and one model out of 10 has got a Gore Glaive with 3 attacks, damage 2. But don't forget, we've already talked about the fact that this unit has got the Bloodbound keyword you can see at the bottom there. So we already know there's at least 2 different ways to get +1 attack on these, which means a unit of 10 Blood Warriors is going to be doing 50 attacks. That's crazy. I just took a moment to just collect myself and talk to the chat about just the sheer volume of damage these guys can do. So I'm right, +2 attacks. Then, obviously, if you want, you could put a prayer on these guys, so they've got rend 2. So we'll ignore the Gore Glaive for a minute. So a reinforced unit of Blood Warriors is going to be 20 models, 20 controlled on an objective. Think about this as a Gargant with 40 health on a 3-up armor save, doing 100 attacks with the Goraxes, which is pretty good. I guess +1 for the champion. And then Hitting on 4s, you can do all that attack. Wound on 3s, you can fight at the same time with another character to get +1 to wound. You could have Ren 2. With Blood Tithe, it could be Ren 3 doing damage 1. That's wild. Ignoring their ability to stand on objective and fight everything under the sun and also maybe hit them back to the sun, they have an ability called No Respite, which is a passive where each time a model in this unit is slain by combat attacks that model was in combat with, the attacking unit roll 2 dice. On a 5-up, you inflict a mortal damage back. This is a crazy unit, and if these are even remotely competitively priced, I assume you'll see a lot of these on the table. The next unit we're going to look at are Skull Reapers. Skull Reapers are an elite melee unit, and each model, and the unit has got 5 models, with each model in the unit having 3 health, and they have a really great 4-up armor save. Move 5 inches, so like all of the infantry units in the game, a little bit slow, and getting on those objectives is going to be a bit tougher. They've got a control value of 1, which you're going to come back to in a minute. Their Demon Forged weapons have got 4 attacks each, and they have critical mortals. So every 60 hit is going to do 2 mortal damage, because that's their damage characteristic. They hit on 4s, wound on 3s, rend 1, damage 2. So a unit of 5 is going to be 4 attacks each, damage 2. And then a unit of 5 is going to do 20 attacks, 21 with a champion. But we already know that we can get +2 attacks, 1 from the Blood Secator and 1 from Wrathmongers. So this does mean that potentially our unit of 10 Skull Reapers can have 6 attacks each for 61 attacks that are critical to mortals, which is really good. That's on average 20 mortal damage that this unit will do, which is pretty significant. They also have a passive called Trial of Skulls, where if this unit destroyed an enemy unit this turn, you add 8 to its control score. So a unit of 5 will be a control score of 5 plus 8. Unit of 10 will be unit of 10 plus 8. Then, if this unit did not destroy an enemy unit this turn, it has a control score of 1 that cannot be modified. That is a really fun little mechanic where you end up killing something, you really hold the objective, and if you don't do enough, then you are boring and Khorne hates you. So that's pretty fun. I gotta say that Wrathmongers, Blood Warriors, and Skull Reapers feel like absolute auto-includes in at least a mortal portion of this army, and they feel really good. Our next unit, and last unit, is the Khorne. Khorne has got 8 health with a 5-up save and is a monster that moves 8 inches with a control value of 2. It's a hybrid unit with 3 attacks that shoot at 6 inches in the range weapons, so a missile weapon. It's got shooting to combat as well, which makes it a little bit better, but it doesn't have any rend. And then the Claws of Fangs weapon profile is 5 attacks, hit on 4s, wound on 2, rend 1, damage 2. Unfortunately, that's pretty much the same profile of one solo Skull Reaper that we looked at in the unit previously. They do have an ability called Horrific Predators, where you pick an enemy in combat with this unit. On a 3+, they cannot benefit from commands. So if you do have an army that is a real problem thanks to their command abilities, you don't need to worry about a Khorne because you've already got that amazing bleeding icon to deal with that for you. And lastly, at the end of any turn, this unit is able to heal 3 if this unit is in combat, which is good. Ultimately, I feel like this has got no tools that other units in the army aren't able to bring with them, and therefore I don't see why you would play with the Khorne. And that's it for my Khorne review. That's all of the units gone through, and I have got a lot to say and a lot to think about with this army. I think that they've done a really good job of differentiating between a full Bloodthirster army and a demon force. Also, it really does feel like the mortal force, while much slower, is very, very effective in building very good objective control and fighting units in, to me, what I think. So I think you can definitely go for like all Bloodthirsters, demons, and you could go mortal, and maybe a smattering of the differences between the two. But I think one of my favorite bits has been those really unique units like the Skulltaker, Scarbrand, Skulltaker specifically for what it can do in the game. Even the Claws of Karak have got some pretty fun utility for the army. There's very limited strike first and strike last in this army, and that's actually really important because some of the other armies have got a lot of that. And for an army that wants to be fighting and wants to be dominating the fight phase, the fact that it has a limited amount of that is probably like a weakness that I'm sure we'll see overcome with some really good combat profiles and just the sheer amount of damage. Yeah, I'm looking at Soulblight Gravelords when I say that strike last, strike first. So I think that might be a problem army potentially for you. Good objective control units. Your units that you can take a lot of, like Blood Warriors, are very survivable, so good for doing that job. You have got mobile units for doing battle tactics as well. I feel like you can integrate with manifestations into the like manifestation, like endless spell game quite well, which is nice. Having an auto unbind thanks to Tithe is good as well. So I think, yeah, you've got a lot of bonuses and a lot of options here, as well as a lot of utility in the army. So I think, you know, a couple of 3d6 charges, that's nice, counter charge as well. So I'd be really excited and happy if I was a Khorne player for what I've got to use here. And yeah, really good. And I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like the video, you can join my Patreon, help support the show, or leave a comment or message someone else. I'll be making loads more videos about Khorne in the future. So yeah, thank you for watching my video, and I'll see you soon. Bye.